Jiwon walked through the long hallways of the Galactic Council building. Her footsteps made soft sounds on the metal floor. She had been the human ambassador for 5 years now. Today was the day she would ask the Council again if humans could become full members. The other alien races already had their places at the big table. The tall, blue-skinned Althari controlled most of the science and technology departments. The strong, gray Vorthak ran the military forces across the galaxy. The peaceful Nexari handled all the mind-related work and meditation centers. There were 12 other races, too, each with their own special jobs. Humans did the fixing. They repaired broken machines, cleaned up messes, and solved problems that nobody else wanted to handle. For 30 years, that had been their role. Jiwon thought it was time for a change. She entered the main council room. The ceiling stretched high above, covered in stars that showed the current state of the galaxy. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in curved rows, facing the center where the Council Prime gave speeches. Veltar, the Althari leader, stood at the center podium. His blue skin seemed to glow under the bright lights. His 4 arms moved as he spoke, making grand gestures. He was talking about trade routes and shipping problems. "The humans have done good work fixing our cargo systems," Veltar said. His voice carried easily through the room. "Their repair teams are quite useful." Jiwon felt her jaw tighten. Useful. That word always made her angry. Humans were not just useful. They were smart, creative, and capable of much more than fixing machines. Minho sat in the visitor section, watching everything. He commanded the small human defense fleet. Only 12 ships, compared to the thousands that other races controlled. He wore his uniform with pride, even though most aliens saw human military forces as a joke. Next to Minho sat Nari, the chief engineer for human operations. She had spent the last 10 years working on alien technology. She understood how their machines worked better than most of the aliens who built them. But when she tried to suggest improvements, the other races usually ignored her ideas. "Ambassador Jiwon of the human delegation," Veltar announced. "You may present your request." Jiwon stood and walked to the center. All eyes in the room focused on her. Some aliens looked bored. Others seemed annoyed. A few appeared curious about what the humans would say this time. "Honored council members," Jiwon began. She kept her voice steady and clear. "For 30 years, humans have worked alongside your species. We have maintained your technology, solved your logistical problems, and helped keep galactic civilization running smoothly." Murmurs spread through the room. Some aliens nodded. They knew humans did good work, even if they did not think much about it. "We have proven our loyalty and our capabilities," Jiwon continued. "We request full membership in the Galactic Council, with voting rights and equal representation." The murmurs grew louder. Some aliens laughed quietly. Others shook their heads or made dismissive gestures with whatever appendages they had. Kethra, the Nexari representative, spoke first. Her voice sounded like music, soft and flowing. "Humans are indeed helpful, but membership requires more than just being good at repairs?" "Yes," agreed Thokmar, the massive Vorthak general. His voice boomed like thunder. "Council membership demands leadership, military strength, political wisdom. Humans are mechanics, not rulers." Veltar raised one of his 4 hands for silence. The room became quiet again. "The human request has been carefully considered," he said. "However, your species lacks the sophistication required for true governance." Jiwon felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her expression neutral. She had expected this response, but it still hurt to hear it spoken so casually. "Your technology is limited compared to ours," Veltar continued. "Your military is small. Your scientific achievements, while adequate for maintenance work, do not compare to Althari research capabilities." More nods around the room. The aliens seemed pleased with this explanation. It confirmed what they already believed about humans. "Your species has found its proper place in galactic society," said Yathal, the crystalline representative from the Outer Rim. Her body sparkled as she spoke. "Why seek to change what works well?" Jiwon looked around the room. She saw the same expressions on every alien face. They saw humans as useful servants, nothing more. They could not imagine humans as equals. We understand the Council's position, Ji-won said finally. Her words came out more quietly than she intended. We will need time to reconsider our role in galactic affairs. Veltar seemed satisfied. Of course. Take all the time you need. Your current duties will continue as before, naturally. The alien representatives began talking among themselves. The meeting was over. Ji-won had been dismissed, just like the previous 4 times she had made this request. She walked back toward the visitor section. Minho and Nari stood up to meet her. Neither of them said anything. They did not need to. Their faces showed they understood what had happened. As they left the council chamber, other humans in the hallways looked at them hopefully. Word spread quickly through the human community when these meetings took place. Everyone wanted to know. If this time would be different, Ji-won shook her head slightly. The hopeful expressions faded. People went back to their work with disappointed sighs. They walked to the human section of the station. It was smaller than the areas given to other races, but humans had made it comfortable. The walls were decorated with art from Earth. The air smelled like home-cooked food from the community kitchens. Same answer as always, Minho said when they reached Ji-won's office. Worse, Nari added. This time, they did not even pretend to think about it seriously. Ji-won sat down heavily in her chair. 30 years, she said. 30 years of proving ourselves, and they still see us as janitors. Maybe because we are too good at it, Nari suggested. When you fix someone's problems perfectly, they stop thinking you can do anything else. Minho crossed his arms. The Vorthak have never fixed a single broken circuit in their lives, but they get to make decisions about galactic defense. We maintain half their fleet systems, but our opinions do not matter. The Althari take credit for discoveries that our engineers made possible, Nari said. Remember the quantum stabilizer improvements? I designed those modifications, but their scientists published the papers. Ji-won stared out the window at the busy space around the station. Ships from dozens of different species came and went constantly. Many of them relied on systems that humans had installed, repaired, or improved. But the aliens who owned those ships never thought about that. What if we stopped? Ji-won asked suddenly. Stopped what? Minho replied. All of it. The fixing, the maintaining, the solving their problems for them. Nari looked surprised. We have contracts, agreements, people depend on us. People who do not respect us, Ji-won pointed out. People who think we are not smart enough to have opinions about our own work. Minho was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, the defense contracts come up for renewal next month. We could just not renew them. The atmospheric processors, on 6 different worlds, Nari added slowly. The ones I have been running for 8 years. They would need someone else to take over. Could the aliens handle it themselves? Ji-won asked. Nari laughed, but it was not a happy sound. They have never tried. They do not understand how I modified their original systems. The documentation is complex. How complex? Very complex. Written in human mathematical concepts, filed in human organizational systems, protected by security protocols that make sense to human minds. Ji-won felt something shift inside her chest. Not anger exactly, but a cold, clear certainty. Then maybe it is time for them to learn. Over the next week, word spread quietly through the human community. Not an official announcement, just conversations between friends, suggestions shared, over meals, ideas discussed in small groups. The humans began to think about what would happen if they simply left, not in anger, not making threats or demands, just leaving, packing up their tools, finishing their current projects and going somewhere else. Some humans worried about the consequences. Others felt excited about the possibilities. All of them were tired of being taken for granted. Ji-won sent a message to Earth and the other human colonies. A simple question. How would you feel about coming home? The answer came back quickly from every human settlement. We have been waiting for you to ask. 3 months passed before anyone in the Galactic Council noticed something was wrong. The first sign came from the Outer Rim territories, where communication arrays began showing strange problems. Hyun had been maintaining the Nexari meditation, chambers on Station Zephyr for 10 years. Every morning he would arrive early to check the crystal resonance systems. The Nexari needed perfect harmony in their environment to achieve their mental connections across space. One small adjustment could affect their ability to communicate with their home world. On a Tuesday morning, Hion simply did not show up. The Nexari waited for him, thinking he might be sick or delayed. By afternoon, they tried to contact him. His quarters were empty. His personal belongings were gone. He had left during the night without saying goodbye. The Nexari tried to maintain their own chambers. They had watched Hion work many times. How hard could it be? But when they touched the crystal controls, the harmony immediately became discord. The resonance patterns that Hion adjusted so easily made no sense to them. Within 3 days, the Nexari on Station Zephyr lost contact with their home world. The meditation chambers that had worked perfectly for a decade suddenly became useless. On the industrial world of Korath, Sola had been running atmospheric processors for 8 years. The planet could not support life without constant air recycling. The original Vorthak systems had been built for their specific biology, but other species had moved to Korath over time. Sola had modified the processors to handle different breathing requirements. She left behind detailed instruction manuals when she disappeared. The Vorthak engineers who tried to replace her found documents written in mathematical concepts they could not understand. The filing system made no sense to their minds. The security protocols seemed simple at first, but every attempt to access the deeper controls failed. The atmospheric processors continued working for 2 weeks after Sola left. Then small problems began to appear. The air mixture shifted slightly. Pressure levels fluctuated. The Vorthak engineers tried to fix these issues, but every change they made seemed to create new problems. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Humans who had been in visible parts of alien society simply vanished. They did not make announcements or send goodbye messages. They finished their current tasks, packed their belongings, and left. Taman had spent 12 years managing the central data networks for the Althari research stations. His work allowed scientists from different species to share information and collaborate on projects. The translation algorithms alone involved 17 different languages and thought patterns. When Taman left, the research networks continued functioning normally for several weeks. Then scientists began reporting strange problems. Data searches returned wrong results. Translation errors appeared in critical research papers. The backup systems that Taman had installed to prevent catastrophic failures were protected by codes that only he understood. The Althari scientists assumed they could solve these problems quickly. They were, after all, the most advanced technological species in the galaxy. But Taman had not just maintained their systems. He had improved them, integrated them with technologies from other species, and created hybrid solutions that worked better than the original designs. The Althari found themselves trying to reverse engineer modifications to their own technology. Council meetings began taking on an urgent tone. Representatives who had barely noticed human workers suddenly wanted to know where they had gone. But finding answers proved difficult. Humans had not broken any laws. They had fulfilled their existing contracts before leaving. They had even left behind instruction manuals and documentation. The problem was that nobody could understand the documentation. Kethra of the Nexari spoke with growing worry in her musical voice. The meditation chambers on 12 stations have gone silent. Our people are isolated from the mental networks that connect our civilization. Our research capabilities have decreased by 60%, admitted Veltar, his usual arrogance replaced by concern. The data systems that coordinate our scientific efforts are failing one by one. General Thokmar slammed his massive fist on the table. Half my fleet's navigation systems are showing errors. The humans modified our computers to interface with 17 different alien technologies. Now my engineers cannot tell which parts are original and which are human improvements. Other representatives shared similar stories. Trade calculations that had worked perfectly for years suddenly produced random results. Manufacturing systems that had been upgraded by human engineers began producing defective products. Communication networks that connected dozens of species started showing mysterious compatibility issues. The Council tried to track down the missing humans. Search teams visited human quarters across the galaxy, but found only empty rooms and forwarded addresses. The addresses led to human colonies in neutral space, far from Council territory. When Council ships approached these colonies, they were met politely but firmly. The humans had not violated any laws by leaving. They had every right to live wherever they chose. The colonies were in neutral space, outside Council jurisdiction. "We are simply exploring new opportunities," explained Jae-hyun, speaking for one of the human settlements. Surely the Council supports the right of all species to determine their own destiny. The Council could not argue with this logic without appearing hypocritical. They had, after all, just denied humans the right to participate in galactic governance. How could they then demand that humans stay and serve alien interests? But the practical problems continued getting worse. On the trading hub of Nexus Prime, economic systems that had been stable for decades suddenly became chaotic. Daeun had spent years quietly optimizing trade algorithms that balanced the needs of 17 different species. Her modifications ensured that no single race could dominate the markets unfairly. Without her constant adjustments, the markets began to swing wildly. Species with faster communication systems gained unfair advantages. Others found themselves unable to compete. Within a month, 3 different trade wars erupted as species accused each other of market manipulation. The Zelthari Stock Exchange, which had been the foundation of galactic commerce for 50 years, collapsed completely. Panic selling followed panic buying in endless cycles. No one could identify exactly what had gone wrong, only that the stabilizing systems were no longer working. Academic institutions faced their own crisis. Junho had managed the Galactic Knowledge Repository for 15 years. This vast database contained the accumulated research and discoveries of all Council species. But each species thought differently, organized information differently, and used different logical systems. Junho had created indexing systems that allowed all these different minds to find what they needed quickly. Without him, researchers found themselves lost in their own accumulated knowledge. Althari scientists could not locate Vorthak military research. Nexari philosophers could not access Zelthari mathematical proofs. The repository contained millions of documents, but they might as well have been written in dead languages. Council sessions became increasingly desperate. Representatives who had dismissed humans as simple maintenance workers now realized how much of galactic civilization depended on human expertise. "How did we not see this?" Yithal asked during one closed session. "How did we not understand how central they were to everything?" "Because they made it look easy," Veltar replied. "When someone solves your problems efficiently and quietly, you stop thinking about how difficult those problems really are." "We need to bring them back," General Thokmar declared. "Offer them better contracts, higher pay, more authority in their areas of expertise." But when Council representatives tried to negotiate with human colonies, they met with polite refusal. The humans were not interested in returning to their old roles. They had found new purposes in their independent settlements. More troubling were the reports coming back from scouts who visited human colonies. The humans were not sitting idle in their new homes. They were building things, creating new technologies, developing systems that combined elements from multiple alien sciences in ways that should have been impossible. "They have Nexari crystals, interfacing with Vorthak fusion cores," reported one scout. "The energy signatures are unlike anything we have seen before. They are using Althari computational matrices to control Zelthari phase shift generators," said another. "The engineering involved should not work according to our understanding." Council scientists tried to dismiss these reports. Surely the scouts were exaggerating or misunderstanding what they saw. Humans were good at maintaining existing technology, but creating new hybrid systems required theoretical knowledge that humans simply did not possess. But the reports kept coming, and they were consistent. The humans were not just combining different technologies. They were improving them, creating integrated systems that performed better than the original designs. Veltar called for a special research committee to study this phenomenon. How could humans who had been relegated to maintenance work for 30 years suddenly display such advanced capabilities? The answer, when it came, shook the foundation of everything the Council believed about human intelligence. Dr. Nari, the former chief engineer, agreed to speak with the research committee V. 6 months after the humans disappeared, galactic civilization was falling apart. What had started as small technical problems had grown into major disasters. The council met in emergency session almost every day, but each meeting only revealed new crises. General Thokmar stood before the assembled representatives with his massive arms crossed. His gray skin looked darker than usual, a sign of stress among the Vorthak. Behind him, a large display showed the positions of his war fleets across the galaxy. 70% of my ships are stranded, he announced. The navigation computers have suffered cascade failures. Our engineers cannot even identify which systems are original Vorthak technology and which parts were modified by humans. Red. Dots on the display marked disabled vessels. They were scattered across dozens of star systems, helpless without their navigation systems. Each ship carried thousands of crew members who depended on those systems to find their way home. The humans integrated our technology with computer systems from 17 different species, Thokmar continued. They created hybrid interfaces that allowed our ships to communicate with any station, any planet, any other vessel in the galaxy. Without those interfaces, our fleets are isolated islands in space. Veltar, the Althari Prime, looked pale. His usually confident demeanor had been replaced by growing panic. Our research stations are experiencing similar problems. Scientific collaboration between species has become almost impossible. The economic situation was even worse. Dayun, the human economist who had quietly managed galactic trade algorithms for years, had left behind systems that no one understood. Her departure had triggered a cascade of market failures that rippled across the galaxy. Yathal's crystalline form flickered with distressed colors as she spoke. The Zelthari financial networks have collapsed completely. We lost 3 trillion credits in a single day when the automated trading systems began competing against each other instead of balancing market forces. The problem was not just technical, it was conceptual. Each alien species had developed technology based on their own way of thinking. Althari computers processed information linearly and logically. Nexari systems relied on intuitive pattern recognition. Vorthak machines emphasized brute force calculations and military efficiency. For thousands of years, each species had worked within their own technological framework. They traded with each other, but their systems remained fundamentally separate. Communications required translators. Data exchange needed format converters. Even simple cooperation demanded complex interface protocols. The humans had changed all that. Over 30 years, they had created seamless connections between incompatible systems. They had built bridges between different ways of thinking. But when they left, those bridges disappeared. On the academic world of Thuros, Professor Junho's absence had created an intellectual crisis. The Galactic Knowledge Repository contained millions of research documents from all council species, but accessing that knowledge had become nearly impossible. Dr. Kilthos, the Althari head of research, stood in his laboratory staring at screens, full of error messages. His team had been trying for weeks to locate a crucial paper about quantum mechanics written by Nexari scientists 20 years ago. They knew the paper existed. They could see references to it in other documents. But the indexing system that should have led them to it returned only gibberish. The humans created search algorithms that understood how different species organize thoughts, Kilthos explained to his frustrated colleagues. Althari minds categorize information hierarchically. Nexari consciousness flows in associative patterns. Vorthak thinking follows command structures. Humans somehow built systems that could translate between all these different cognitive approaches. Without those translation systems, each species found themselves locked out of knowledge created by others. The galaxy's accumulated wisdom had become a library where every book was written in a different language, with no dictionaries available. The infrastructure problems were growing worse every day. Sola's atmospheric processors continued to malfunction on worlds across the galaxy. Her replacement, a Vorthak engineer named Groktar, had been working 18-hour days trying to understand her modifications. She did not just maintain the original systems, Groktar reported to the council. She redesigned them completely. The air recycling processes now handle breathing requirements for 7 different species simultaneously, but the control mechanisms use mathematical principles that I cannot decode. The instruction manuals Sola had left behind were technically complete. Every component was documented, every process was explained, but the explanations assumed knowledge that no single alien species possessed. To understand her atmospheric systems, an engineer would need to think like an Althari scientist, feel like a Nexari mystic, and calculate like a Vorthak military computer all at the same time. On Korath, the planetary atmosphere was slowly becoming toxic. Oxygen levels fluctuated. Unpredictably, carbon dioxide removal systems worked sporadically. 300,000 colonists faced evacuation if the problems could not be solved soon. Similar crises erupted across the galaxy. On the mining world of Keflos, automated excavation systems that had worked flawlessly for 15 years suddenly began digging in random directions. The human technician who had programmed them, a quiet woman named Isul, had created mining algorithms that adapted to geological conditions on multiple planets simultaneously. The Althari engineers who tried to reprogram the systems discovered that Isel had somehow taught the machines to think creatively. The excavation computers did not just follow preset instructions. They analyzed ground conditions, predicted optimal mining paths, and adjusted their strategies based on real-time data from dozens of different sensor types. "How did she make Althari computers think like living beings?" asked Dr. Kilthos during one emergency consultation. "Our programming languages are not designed for adaptive reasoning." The answer remained a mystery. Isol had left comprehensive documentation, but it was written in programming concepts that combined Althari logic with Nexari intuition and Vorthak efficiency protocols. Understanding her code required thinking in ways that individual alien species could not achieve. The Council tried everything they could think of to solve these problems. They assigned their best scientists to study human documentation. They offered massive rewards for anyone who could decode human systems. They even attempted to reverse engineer human modifications by studying the failed equipment. Nothing worked. The humans had not simply maintained alien technology. They had transformed it into something entirely new. They had created hybrid systems that were greater than the sum of their parts. Dr. Sunwoo, a human scientist, agreed to speak with Council researchers via long-range communication. Her image appeared on screens in research facilities across the galaxy. Scientists from all species gathered to hear her explanation. "You are trying to understand our work using the same thinking that created your original problems," she said. "Each of your species developed technology in isolation. You see the universe through your own cognitive filters. Althari minds seek logical patterns. Nexari consciousness flows with intuitive connections. Vorthak thinking follows hierarchical command structures." She paused, looking directly at the camera. "Humans think differently. We do not have a single cognitive approach. We adapt our thinking to match whatever problem we are trying to solve. When we work with Althari computers, we think like Althari. When we maintain Nexari crystals, we think like Nexari. When we repair Vorthak engines, we think like Vorthak." The alien scientists listened in stunned silence. "But more than that," Sunwoo continued, "we can think like all of them simultaneously. We can see connections that you cannot see because you are locked into your own species' way of perceiving reality." "That is impossible," protested Dr. Kilthos. "Cognitive frameworks are biologically determined. No species can think in multiple paradigms simultaneously." Sunwoo smiled. "No single paradigm species can do that, but humans are not a single paradigm species. We are cognitive generalists. We always have been." The transmission ended, leaving the assembled scientists with more questions than answers. How could humans claim to think like multiple species? How could any biological mind operate using different cognitive frameworks simultaneously? Meanwhile, the practical crises continued, mounting. Transportation networks that had connected the galaxy for decades began failing as human-maintained systems shut down one by one. Communication relays that had enabled instant contact between distant worlds went silent. Manufacturing facilities that had produced goods for multiple species simultaneously ground to a halt. The Council faced a terrifying realization. Galactic civilization had not just benefited from human maintenance work. It had become dependent on human cognitive abilities that no other species possessed. Without humans to maintain the connections between different alien technologies, the galaxy was fragmenting back into isolated species. Each race found themselves trapped within their own technological limitations, unable to access the broader capabilities that human integration had provided. Council Prime Veltar called for an emergency meeting of all species leaders. The situation had moved beyond technical problems. This was becoming an existential crisis for Gal. The Council had waited long enough. With galactic civilization crumbling around them, they decided to send search fleets to locate the missing humans and convince them to return. What they found defied every assumption they had made about human capabilities. Scout Captain Zendar of the Althari led the first expedition. His sleek blue ship approached the coordinates where humans had established their nearest colony. Long-range sensors had detected energy signatures from the settlement, but the readings made no sense. The power output seemed impossibly high for such a small colony. Approaching human settlement designated New Sol, Zendar reported to his crew. Population estimated at 50,000, but these energy readings suggest industrial capacity equivalent to a major Althari research station. His science officer, Litir Ralthi, checked the sensor displays again. Captain, I am detecting Nexari crystal technology, but the resonance patterns are unlike anything in our databases. The crystals appear to be interfacing with Vorthak fusion cores, which should be impossible due to incompatible energy frequencies. Zendar frowned. The Althari had tried for centuries to create stable interfaces between their technology and other species systems. The fundamental differences in how each race approached energy manipulation had made such integration extremely difficult. Only humans had ever achieved reliable cross-species compatibility, and everyone assumed they had simply found clever workarounds rather than solving the underlying theoretical problems. As their ship entered the system, they were greeted by a human patrol vessel. But this was no ordinary spacecraft. Zendar's sensors detected armor that used Althari crystalline matrix technology, weapons that combined Vorthak plasma cores with Nexari targeting systems, and engines that appeared to use principles from at least 5 different species simultaneously. "This is impossible," whispered Litir Ralthi. "No single ship design should be able to incorporate so many incompatible technologies." The human ship hailed them with perfect protocol. "Welcome to the New Sol system, Captain Zendar. I am Commander Wujin of the New Terran Defense Force. We have been expecting Council representatives." Wujin's voice carried confidence that had not been there when he served as a human liaison officer years ago. Zendar remembered him as a competent but unremarkable officer who handled routine communications between human and Althari facilities. "Commander, we request permission to visit your colony and speak with your leadership about returning to Council space." "Permission granted. Please follow our guide ship to the orbital station." What Zendar saw next challenged everything he thought he knew about technology and engineering. The orbital station that appeared on their screens was a masterpiece of integrated design. Althari computational cores provided the processing power. Nexari crystals created harmonic resonance fields. Vorthak military-grade shields protected the structure. Zelthari phase shift technology allowed sections of the station to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, but it was more than just a collection of alien technologies bolted together. The integration was seamless, elegant, and functional, in ways that should have been theoretically impossible. Each component enhanced the others, creating capabilities that exceeded what any individual technology could achieve. "How?" Litir Ralthi asked quietly. "How did they make it work?" The docking bay that received their ship demonstrated the same impossible integration. Althari tractor beams guided them in while Nexari harmonic fields stabilized their ship's systems. Vorthak-style mechanical clamps secured them with military precision, while Zelthari temporal stabilizers eliminated any dimensional stress from the docking process. Commander Wu Jin met them personally at the airlock. He wore a uniform that incorporated design elements from multiple species but remained distinctly human. His bearing had changed since Zendar last saw him. Where once he had seemed deferential and eager to please, now he projected quiet confidence and authority. "Welcome aboard Station Unity," Wu Jin said with a smile. "I hope you will find our facilities interesting." He led them through corridors that demonstrated the same technological fusion they had observed from outside. Environmental systems maintained perfect atmospheric conditions for multiple species simultaneously. Lighting adjusted automatically to accommodate different visual spectrums. Gravity generators could create zones of different gravitational strength. For visitors from various worlds, this is remarkable, Zendar admitted. Our scientists have theorized about such integration for centuries, but considered it practically impossible. It was impossible, Wu Jin agreed, as long as each species remained locked into their own technological paradigms. But humans see things differently. They entered a vast observation lounge where other human leaders waited. Zendar recognized several faces from his previous interactions with human maintenance staff, but their demeanor had completely transformed. These were no longer the quietly efficient service workers he remembered. They carried themselves like the leaders of a major galactic power. Dr. Yunji, formerly a systems analyst who had worked on Althari research stations, stepped forward to greet the visitors. Captain, we understand that the Council is experiencing some difficulties with systems that humans previously maintained. More than difficulties, Zendar replied honestly. Galactic civilization is fragmenting. Without human expertise to maintain the connections between our technologies, we are reverting to isolated species with limited capabilities. Dr. Yunji nodded sympathetically. That was inevitable once we departed. For 30 years humans served as the connective tissue that held galactic civilization together. We provided the cognitive flexibility necessary to bridge the gaps between incompatible ways of thinking. We did not realize how dependent we had become on human capabilities, Zendar admitted. The Council sent me to ask if humans would consider returning to their previous roles, perhaps with improved status and compensation. The humans exchanged glances. Dr. Aounji spoke carefully. Captain, we appreciate the Council's offer. But we can no longer return to our previous roles because we have outgrown them. She gestured toward the massive windows that showed the space around the station. Other human ships moved through the area, each one demonstrating the same impossible technological integration that Zendar had observed. For 3 decades, humans maintained alien technology because that was the only opportunity we were given to learn and grow. But we were always capable of much more. We simply lacked the chance to prove it. What do you mean? Lieutenant Ralphie asked. Humans are cognitive generalists, explained Dr. Sunwoo, who had joined the group. Most species develop within a single paradigm of thought. Althari minds excel at logical analysis. Nexari consciousness flows with intuitive connections. Vorthak thinking follows hierarchical structures. Each approach has strengths, but also limitations. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Humans developed differently. Our cognition is fundamentally flexible. We can think like Althari when working with logical problems, like Nexari when dealing with intuitive challenges, like Vorthak when military precision is required. But more importantly, we can combine these approaches simultaneously. That should be neurologically impossible, Lieutenant Ralphie protested. For single-paradigm minds, yes. But human brains evolved to handle multiple cognitive frameworks simultaneously. We had to, because Earth contained multiple intelligent subspecies and complex social structures that required constant adaptation. Dr. Yunji activated a holographic display that showed the technological achievements of the human colonies. While serving as maintenance workers, we learned to understand alien technologies better than their creators. We saw connections and possibilities that escaped species locked into single ways of thinking. The display showed engineering diagrams that combined principles from multiple alien sciences. Zendar studied the designs with growing amazement. These were not simple combinations of existing technologies. They represented entirely new approaches to energy manipulation, information processing, and physical engineering. You have been busy, he said quietly. We have been free, Commander Wu Jin corrected. Free to explore our actual capabilities, rather than being limited to maintenance roles. The tour that followed left the Althari delegation speechless. They visited laboratories where human scientists worked with equipment that seamlessly integrated discoveries from all Council species. They saw manufacturing facilities that produced materials with properties that no single alien technology could achieve. They watched training simulations where human pilots operated ships that combined the best features of every known spacecraft design. Most impressive was the Central Research Facility, where humans were developing what they called unified theory engineering. Traditional alien science treated different physical phenomena as separate disciplines. Humans approached physics as a single integrated system where energy, matter, information, and consciousness all interacted according to universal principles. We call it collaborative science, Dr. Sun Wu explained as they watched researchers working with equipment that defied categorization. Instead of seeing Althari logic and Nexari intuition as competing approaches, we treat them as complementary, tools for understanding reality. The results were extraordinary. Human researchers had developed materials that Captain Zendar's report sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. The assembled representatives sat in stunned silence as he described what he had witnessed at the human colonies. The holographic displays showed images that challenged everything. They thought they knew about technology and engineering. "This cannot be accurate," Council Prime Veltar said finally, his blue skin pale with disbelief. "You are suggesting that humans have achieved in months what our species have been unable to accomplish in millennia." "I am reporting what I observed," Zendar replied calmly. "Human colonies are operating with technologies that seamlessly integrate the best achievements of all our species. But they have gone beyond simple integration. They have created entirely new approaches to science and engineering." General Thokmar leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the table. "Show us their military capabilities." The display changed to show images of human defense ships. The vessels were smaller than typical Vorthak warships, but their design incorporated elements that made traditional military analysis meaningless. Althari energy shields provided protection, while Nexari harmonic weapons could disrupt targets at the quantum level. Vorthak-style armor was enhanced with Zelthari phase shifting that made the ships partially exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. A single human frigate could potentially engage an entire Vorthak battle group, Zendar admitted reluctantly. Their defensive systems adapt to incoming threats in real time. Their weapons target not just physical structures but the fundamental energy patterns that hold matter together. The silence in the chamber was profound. For thousands of years, the Vorthak had dominated galactic military affairs through superior firepower and aggressive tactics. The idea that humans could have developed technologies that made traditional warfare obsolete was almost incomprehensible. "How?" whispered Kethra, the Nexari representative. "How did they advance so rapidly?" "They explained it to me," Zendar said. "Humans are what they call cognitive generalists. They can think using multiple paradigms simultaneously. While our species remained locked into our individual approaches to science and technology, humans learned to combine all of our approaches." He activated another display showing the research facilities he had visited. They have laboratories, where scientists work using Althari logical analysis, Nexari intuitive pattern recognition, and Vorthak systematic methodology all at the same time. They see connections that escape us because we cannot step outside our own ways of thinking. Dr. Kilthos, the Althari research coordinator, studied the images carefully. These research configurations should be impossible. Althari logical processes and Nexari intuitive methods are fundamentally incompatible. They operate on completely different principles of causation and evidence. "Not for human minds," Zendar explained. "They treat different cognitive approaches as tools rather than absolute frameworks. They use whatever thinking method works best for each specific problem." The implications were staggering. If humans could truly think using multiple paradigms simultaneously, they possessed a cognitive flexibility that no other known species had achieved. They could approach any problem from multiple angles at once, seeing solutions that remained invisible to single-paradigm minds. Council member Yithal's crystalline form flickered with confused colors. "But their technology, how did they make incompatible systems work together?" "Because the incompatibility was artificial," Zendar replied. "Our technologies only seem incompatible because we designed them using different cognitive frameworks. Humans see the underlying principles that connect all of our approaches to manipulating energy and matter." The display showed engineering, diagrams that combined Althari computational matrices with Nexari crystal resonance and Vorthak fusion technology. To alien eyes, these designs looked like impossible tangles of conflicting principles, but according to human explanations, they represented elegant solutions to problems that had puzzled galactic science for millennia. They call it unified theory. "Engineering," Zendar continued. Instead of treating physics as separate disciplines, they approach it as a single integrated system. Energy, matter, information, and consciousness all interact according to universal principles that our specialized sciences have been too narrow to perceive. General Thokmar slammed his fist on the table. This is unacceptable. Humans were maintenance, workers. They fixed our machines. They cannot suddenly become more advanced than all of us combined. But they were never just maintenance workers, Veltar said slowly, his voice heavy with realization. We assigned them to maintenance roles because we could not see their true capabilities. We kept them busy fixing our problems while they learned to understand our technologies better than we did. The full scope of the Council's mistake was becoming clear. For 30 years, they had possessed access to a species with unprecedented cognitive abilities. Instead of recognizing human potential and fostering their development, the Council had relegated them to servant roles and ignored their contributions to galactic civilization. Dr. Kilthos spoke quietly. During those 30 years, how many human innovations did we dismiss as mere maintenance work? How many breakthrough discoveries did we attribute to our own scientists because we could not imagine that humans were capable of original research? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Council records were full of technological improvements that had appeared mysteriously over the decades. Althari computers had become more efficient. Nexari crystals had developed new resonance capabilities. Vorthak weapons had gained unexpected precision. Everyone had assumed these improvements were natural developments within each species' research programs. But now they realized that human maintenance workers had been quietly upgrading alien technologies for decades. Every system they touched had been enhanced, optimized, and integrated with capabilities from other species. The humans had been conducting advanced research while disguised as simple repair technicians. We need them back, Veltar said firmly. Whatever it takes, we must convince them to return and help us stabilize galactic civilization. I do not think they will return, Zendar replied. At least, not as subordinates. They have moved beyond their old roles. They see themselves as equals now, not servants. Equals? General Thokmar's voice carried outrage. They are a single species. We are 12 species with thousands of years of development. A single species that has mastered the technologies of all 12 others, Zendar pointed out, and improved upon them in ways we never imagined possible. The debate that followed revealed deep divisions within the Council. Some representatives wanted to use military force to compel human cooperation. Others advocated for economic pressure or diplomatic isolation. A few suggested that the Council should accept human demands for equal partnership. But underlying all the discussions was a growing fear. The reports from human colonies suggested that humanity was not just developing new technologies. They were transcending the fundamental limitations that had constrained galactic civilization for millennia. More scouting reports arrived daily, each one more unsettling than the last. Human colonies were not just surviving independently, they were thriving in ways that defied conventional understanding. They had developed manufacturing systems that created materials with impossible properties. They had built transportation networks that moved ships faster than any known technology allowed. They had established communication systems that operated outside normal space-time constraints. Most disturbing were reports of human exploration ships venturing into regions of space that had been considered uninhabitable. Areas with dangerous radiation levels, unstable gravitational fields, or exotic energy phenomena that destroyed conventional spacecraft. Human ships not only survived in these environments, but seemed to adapt and thrive in them. They are expanding their territory at an unprecedented rate, reported Scout Captain Thelnix during one emergency session. Human colonies are appearing in star systems that our scientists classified as impossible to inhabit. How are they surviving conditions that would destroy our ships? Asked Veltar. Their technology adapts, Thelnix replied. I observed a human ship entering a stellar storm that should have torn apart any known vessel. Instead of being damaged, the ship's hull seemed to absorb the energy and use it to enhance its own capabilities. The implications were terrifying. If humans could operate in environments that no other species could survive, they would have access to resources and territory that remain forever beyond the reach of the Council. They could establish themselves as the dominant force in the galaxy simply by occupying regions that others could not contest. But perhaps most unsettling was the attitude of the humans themselves. In every interaction with Council scouts, they remained polite, respectful, and completely confident. They showed no hostility toward their former employers, but also no interest in returning to their old roles. "They act like they have already won," observed Kethra after reviewing the latest diplomatic contacts. "Not with arrogance or aggression, but with the quiet certainty of beings who no longer consider us relevant to their future." The Council faced an unprecedented situation. They had inadvertently created a species that surpassed them in every meaningful category. 1 year after the human departure, everything had changed. The Galactic Council chambers, once filled with the confident voices of species who saw themselves as the galaxy's natural rulers, now echoed with desperate discussions about survival. Ambassador. Heejin stood at the center of the Great Chamber, but the dynamics were completely different from when Jiwon had made her final request for human membership. This time, the humans were not asking for anything. They were offering something the Council desperately needed. Heejin wore the simple but elegant uniform of the United Human Colonies. Behind her stood a small delegation that included Dr. Yoonji, Commander Woojin, and President Minjae, the elected leader of the new human government. Their presence radiated quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with the anxiety visible among the alien representatives. "Honored Council members," Heejin began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "We have come to offer assistance in stabilizing galactic civilization." The words were almost identical to what Jiwon had said a year ago, but the context had transformed their meaning completely. Then, humans had been asking for permission to help as equals. Now they were offering to help from a position of obvious superiority. Veltar, the Althari Prime, looked older than his species' normal aging patterns should have allowed. The stress of watching galactic civilization crumble had taken a visible toll. "We are grateful for the human offer of assistance," he said carefully. "What terms do you propose?" "True partnership," Heejin replied immediately. "Shared decision-making in all matters affecting galactic civilization, joint development of technologies and resources, equal representation in governance proportional to contribution rather than arbitrary tradition." The terms were reasonable, but they represented a complete reversal of the power structure that had existed for thousands of years. The Council species would have to acknowledge humans as equals, and in many areas as superiors. General Thokmar shifted uncomfortably in his oversized chair. His once mighty military fleets remained largely stranded throughout the galaxy, dependent on human technical assistance just to return home. What guarantees do we have that humans will not use their technological advantages to dominate other species? President Minjae stepped forward to answer. "The same guarantee you gave us for 30 years, our demonstrated behavior. We could have used our capabilities to seize control of galactic civilization by force. Instead, we departed peacefully and built our own independent society. We return now offering partnership, not conquest." The comparison was pointed and uncomfortable. The Council species had possessed overwhelming advantages over humanity for decades, and they had used those advantages to keep humans in subordinate roles. Humans, when they achieved superior capabilities, had chosen cooperation over domination. Kethra, the Nexari representative, spoke with her musical voice. "The meditation networks that connect our civilization remain largely inactive. Our people feel isolated and afraid. Can these systems be restored?" "Yes," Dr. Yoonji answered, "but not to their previous configuration. We can create new networks that work better than the old ones. Systems that allow all species to participate in expanded consciousness sharing, not just the Nexari." She activated a holographic display that showed technical specifications for consciousness interface networks. The designs combined Nexari crystal technology with Althari computational systems and entirely new human innovations that made direct mind-to-mind communication possible across species barriers. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Kilthos. "Nexari consciousness operates on quantum resonance frequencies that are incompatible with Althari logical processing." "Not impossible," Dr. Yoonji corrected gently. "Just difficult if you approach it from a single perspective. When you combine quantum consciousness with logical analysis and add human cognitive bridging techniques, the incompatibilities become complementary differences. The display showed test results from human colonies where volunteers from different species had successfully achieved direct mental communication. Althari logical patterns could interface with Nexari intuitive flows. Vorthak hierarchical thinking could connect with Zelthari creative chaos. Human consciousness served as a translation medium that made all forms of intelligence mutually accessible. "You are proposing to revolutionize how our species interact," observed Yith-Al, her crystalline form shifting through contemplative colors. "We are proposing to fulfill the original promise of galactic civilization," President Minje replied. "True cooperation between different forms of intelligence, rather than parallel development within isolated cognitive frameworks." The discussion that followed revealed the full scope of human capabilities. They had solutions for every crisis facing the galaxy. The stranded Vorthak fleets could be rescued using hybrid navigation systems that combined the best features of all known technologies. The collapsed economic networks could be rebuilt using adaptive algorithms that balanced the needs of all species simultaneously. The failing infrastructure could be restored with self-repairing systems that improved themselves over time. But every solution required accepting humans as full partners in galactic governance. The days when humans would fix problems while remaining invisible and voiceless were over. "Why?" Veltar asked finally. "Why are you willing to help us after how we treated you?" Hejin was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Because galactic civilization is bigger than any single species. The knowledge and achievements of all our peoples working together can create something greater than any of us could achieve alone. We learned that during our 30 years of maintaining your technologies." She gestured toward the holographic displays, showing human technological achievements. "Everything we have accomplished builds on foundations laid by your species. Althari, logic, Nexari intuition, Vorthak engineering, Zelthari creativity. We combined all of these approaches because each one offered unique insights into reality. But we could not see those connections ourselves," Dr. Kilthos said quietly. "Because you were locked into single paradigm thinking," Dr. Yunji explained. "Each species developed powerful capabilities within their own cognitive framework, but remained blind to possibilities that existed outside those frameworks. Humans developed differently. We became cognitive bridges between different ways of understanding the universe." President Minje stepped forward. "The galaxy needs those bridges. Without them, civilization fragments into isolated species with limited potential. With them, all of us can transcend our individual limitations and achieve things that no single species could imagine." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The Council faced a choice between partnership with humans or watching galactic civilization collapse while humanity established itself as the dominant force in the galaxy. When the final vote came, it was unanimous. The Galactic Partnership was established with humanity as a founding member with full rights and responsibilities. The new governmental structure reflected contribution and capability rather than historical precedent. Humans, despite being a single species among many, held positions proportional to their role in maintaining and advancing galactic civilization. The transformation that followed exceeded everyone's expectations. Human cognitive bridging techniques allowed different species to work together in ways that had never been possible. Althari scientists collaborated directly with Nexari philosophers, sharing thoughts and insights across the barriers that had previously separated logical and intuitive approaches to knowledge. Vorthak military precision combined with Zelthari creative flexibility to produce defensive systems that were both incredibly efficient and surprisingly beautiful. Economic networks that had operated as zero-sum competitions between species became cooperative systems that enhanced prosperity for all participants. The technological breakthroughs were extraordinary. Materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, energy systems that became more efficient by incorporating uncertainty rather than fighting it, transportation networks that moved ships through folded space using principles that combined discoveries from all known physics traditions. But perhaps most important was the psychological transformation. Species that had seen themselves as fundamentally different and often incompatible began to recognize their underlying unity. The barriers between logical and intuitive thinking, hierarchical and creative approaches, individual and collective consciousness, all proved to be artificial limitations that could be transcended through proper understanding. Dr. Seo Yoon, now Director of Interspecies Development, often reflected on the irony of the situation. "They wanted us to fix their machines," she said, during an interview celebrating the 5th anniversary of the partnership. "We ended up fixing their entire approach to civilization. The old council chambers had been converted into a museum with exhibits showing the evolution of galactic civilization from isolated species to integrated partnership. The centerpiece was a simple plaque that read, 'In memory of the 30 years when the galaxy's greatest strength was mistaken for its most expendable resource.' Visitors from across the galaxy came to study the exhibits and learn about the transformation that had occurred. Children from all species learned about the importance of recognizing potential in unexp